episode 94, All the Everything podcast. I'm Billy. That's Tim.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our summer short series where we give you a 30-minute-ish episode. You know, if we go over, we can do that. And just for you to have a little bite for the day and move on with your activities. So we've got a great episode. Sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Well, there ain't nothing to it but to do it. Are you ready, my friend?
You better believe it. Let's get into all the everything, y'all.
All the everything. 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 Podcast! Welcome to the madness.
Well, welcome back to yet another amazing episode of All the Everything podcast. As always, I'm one of your co-hosts, Tim Sawhook, and I'm joined by my best friend, the best pal, the best producer, podcast host, ladies and gentlemen, Billy the Parchment. How you doing, Billy?
What's going on, Tim? Man, I'm glad to be back in the studio. We got a very fun episode today, so I'm really excited about that. It's going to be, ooh, it might make your blood boil a little bit.
I think it will. Or if you had any part of these, we won't say what it is yet. Maybe you'll bring back some little PTSD for some things you went through. And we see that in a fun way, by the way. There shouldn't be any real PTSD on here.
No, it's not. Don't worry. We're not going to make you cry on this episode.
It's kind of like
a little bit.
It's like the cringy PTSD, maybe, right?
Yes.
Something like that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I think, like Billy said, I think people are really going to love this one. So, Billy, without further ado, what are we talking about today, my friend?
Well, you know, we've done 2 Reddit series already with some amazing stories out there that people have to share. And so we're tapping back into the Reddit, but this time with a focus. And that focus is Bridezillas. That's right. That special day, the one you've been waiting for your entire life. And can you handle it? A lot of people can't.
I know. Well, it is wedding season, right? So this is best time to do it during wedding season. And the last time we did a Reddit story episode was actually September of last year. So we're due for a new Reddit story episode. I know you guys love them. We got good feedback about it. We love doing them because the stories are unbelievably real.
So crazy. So crazy.
All right, Billy. Are you going to be up first? You going to tell your Bridezilla story?
Oh, my gosh.
I can't wait to hear it.
Oh, okay. So buckle in, y'all. Okay, here we go. I am a church organist, and before COVID, I averaged around 50 weddings a year. That's crazy.
That's a lot.
Yeah. By the time that this happened, I have played 488 weddings. I've seen brides burst into tears because flower girls refuse to walk, grooms pass out at the altar, rings drop down into the floor vents.
Oh, man.
Dresses ripped, unity candles won't light, and enough family drama to last several lifetimes. After almost 500 weddings, I honestly thought I had seen it all. I hadn't. This wedding still holds the undisputed title for the craziest weekend of my career.
Oh my gosh.
The wedding was at the church where I worked full-time as the organist. Our senior pastor happened to be out of town that weekend, attending a family reunion that had been planned several years earlier. So he had arranged for a pastor friend of his to fill in and perform the ceremony. By all accounts, the bride's mother was furious that he wouldn't cancel his family vacation for her daughter's wedding.
Gosh.
Apparently, she believed that was a perfectly reasonable expectation. Eventually, she stopped complaining about the pastor, mostly because she found plenty of other things to complain about.
Oh, great.
Normally, I don't attend wedding rehearsals. That's simply not part of my job. I show up on the wedding day, I play the music, and I go home. However, our church wedding coordinator told me that the bride specifically requested that I be there. She explained that there would be an additional fee for my attendance and made it very clear to everyone involved that I could only stay from 5 to 6 p.m. because I had another obligation that evening. The bride agreed without hesitation and assured everyone that an hour was more than enough time. If you've ever been involved in a wedding, you already know where this is headed. I pulled up into the church parking lot around 4:45 that afternoon and immediately noticed that there was only 3 cars there. Mine, the church wedding coordinators, and one I didn't recognize. That should have been my first sign of warning. When I walked into the sanctuary, I saw a woman standing near the altar arranging flowers and candles. She was wearing a skin tight, strapless dress, sky high heels, perfectly styled hair, and enough makeup to survive a hurricane. Thinking I was simply being friendly, I smiled and said, "Hey, you must be the bride. I'm the organist." She slowly turned around, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Are you effing kidding me?" and I
What?
and I edited that for family friendliness.
Thank you.
Well, this is already going better than I expected. "I am the mother of the bride," she snapped. "I go to church here. I know exactly who you are." Oh, okay. Now, to be fair, I had made an honest mistake. Most mothers of the brides don't look like they're trying to be on a reality dating show. I apologized immediately, but she wasn't interested. She rolled her eyes and let out one of those dramatic sighs that can only be heard 3 counties away. And she informed me that she didn't have time for small talk. Real nice. There's a real Christian welcome for you there at the church.
Exactly.
At this point, I decided that it was probably for the best to quietly walk to the organ bench and just stay out of the way. A couple minutes later, our church wedding coordinator came into the sanctuary. We exchanged our normal small talk, and I mentioned my pleasant interaction with the mother of the bride. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she laughed, shook her head, and just said, "Oh, just wait. I have a feeling this is about to get good." 5 o'clock came and went, and the only people who had actually managed to arrive on time were the pastor, the groom, the groomsmen, both grandmothers, both sets of parents, and the ushers. The one person noticeably absent was the bride. Pretty important part there. By 5:15, the mother of the bride had assured everyone her daughter was just a few minutes away. Our wedding coordinator gently reminded her that both the pastor and I had other commitments after 6 o'clock, and we would be leaving after our contracted 1-hour rehearsal. The mother immediately argued that the hour shouldn't start until the bride actually arrived.
My gosh.
No. That's not how that works, y'all.
No.
Yep. Without saying a word, our wedding coordinator calmly opened the folder, pulled out a signed rehearsal contract, flipped to the highlighted section, and handed it to her. I've never seen someone lose an argument so quickly to a piece of paper. She read the highlighted paragraph, pursed her lips, and headed back without another word, and immediately called her daughter. About 20 minutes later, the front doors finally swung open. The bride swept into the sanctuary with 12 bridesmaids, 4 flower girls, 2 ring bearers, and her own wedding coordinator.
Oh.
The resemblance between the bride and mother, honestly, was a little unsettling. Same expression, same attitude, same look that suggested that everyone else on earth existed solely to make their lives easier. By the time everyone was finally lined up, I glanced at the clock. It was 5:40 p.m. Somehow we were expected to rehearse a wedding involving nearly 30 people in 20 minutes. Our church wedding coordinator took a deep breath and decided to start seating the family. The groom's parents were escorted down the aisle without any problem, and then it was time for the groom's grandmother. An usher began pushing her wheelchair down the center of the aisle. They had barely made it a few feet before the bride held up her hand and loudly explained, "No!" Every conversation in the sanctuary stopped instantly. She pointed directly at the wheelchair and said, "I don't want that coming down the aisle."
Oh my gosh.
She either needs to walk down holding somebody's arm or she needs to be seated before the ceremony starts. I don't want a wheelchair in my wedding.
Oh my gosh.
For a few seconds, nobody said a word. And I honestly think that everybody was just trying to process what had just happened. Then the groom calmly looked at his fiancée and said, "That's not happening." He explained that his grandmother was going to be recognized just like every other member of the family, and that
Right.
she would be escorted down the aisle exactly as planned. His mother immediately backed him up, saying, "My mother will come down the aisle just like the bride's grandmother." End of discussion. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of the discussion. The mother of the bride immediately jumped in, and insisted that the wheelchair would ruin the look of the ceremony and the photographs. The groom wasn't backing down. His mother wasn't backing down. And within seconds, the bride had joined in as well. Before long, all four of them were talking over each other while this poor grandmother just sat there quietly in her wheelchair looking embarrassed, like she had somehow became the center of an argument that she had never asked to be a part of. The visiting pastor finally stepped in between everyone and in the calmest voice possible said, "Let's finish the rehearsal. We can discuss this afterwards." Somehow that managed to settle everyone down long enough to continue, although I could tell that neither side had actually changed their mind. Next came the bridal party. Amazingly, 12 bridesmaids, 12 groomsmen, 4 flower girls, 2 ring bearers turned out to be the least dramatic people in the entire building. They lined up, they walked where they were told, they did exactly what was expected of them. It was the only normal part of the evening. Finally, it was time for the bride's entrance. I started playing the processional as she and her father entered through the back doors of the sanctuary. Our center aisle is fairly long, but after nearly 500 weddings, I have a pretty good feel of how long it should take a bride to reach the altar. After about a minute, I realized something wasn't right. I looked up from the organ to see what was taking so long, and that's when I realized that they weren't actually walking. They would take 3 or 4 steps, they would stop, the bride would pull out her phone, pose, snap a selfie, put her phone away, walk another few feet, stop again, and repeat the entire process. Her poor father just stood there waiting every single time, looking like a man who had accepted his fate years ago.
Yeah.
Poor guy. When she finally reached the altar, I figured we can move on. Instead, she smiled and announced, "I want to do it again." The pastor politely told her that if there was time after the end of rehearsal, they could certainly run it again. But right now, they needed to continue with the ceremony. The bride immediately started arguing that it wasn't perfect. And then, of course, her mother joins in the conversation.
Oh, man.
After several minutes of listening to the two of them complain, everyone finally agreed to restart the processional simply because it would have been faster to stop this little hissy fit of theirs. So we reset and everybody back to the sanctuary and started over. I wish I could tell you that, she skipped the selfies on the second time. She didn't. If anything, she stopped even more than before. I glanced at the clock above the sanctuary. It was 6:10 p.m. My contract had ended 10 minutes earlier. I quietly finished the music. I shut off the organ. I locked the console. I gathered my music and I started walking to the back of the sanctuary. I had almost made it to the doors when I heard someone yell up, "Excuse me!" I didn't even have to turn around to know exactly who it was.
Right.
The mother of the bride came charging across the sanctuary, grabbed my arm, and demanded to know, "Where do you think you're going?" I calmly replied, "My contract had ended at 6 o'clock. I have another obligation this evening." She stared at me like I had just confessed to committing a crime. Apparently, she never actually believed I meant it when I said I was leaving at 6. And at this point, it was after 6.
Yeah.
"You are unbelievably unprofessional," she shouted. "How dare you leave before the rehearsal is finished? You have completely disrespected my daughter and our family. I'll make sure everyone at this church knows exactly how rude you've been. I'll be contacting the staff parish relations committee first thing Monday morning, and don't be surprised if you don't have a job next week." After almost 500 weddings, I learned that arguing with people like this never accomplishes anything. So instead, I smiled. I looked her right in the eyes and I said, "That's a risk I'm willing to take." I wished everybody a good evening. I turned around and I walked my happy tail right out those doors. About 2 hours later, around 8 o'clock that evening, my phone rang. It was our church wedding coordinator. The first words out of her mouth was, "You left way too early. Things got really good after you left." Apparently, the argument over the grandmother's wheelchair started all over again the second I walked out. Once that finally settled down, another disagreement broke over the family's pictures. And before it was all over, the rehearsal had dragged on for almost another hour.
Oh my gosh.
She then reminded me about something that I had completely forgotten. The soloist was supposed to be at the rehearsal with me, but she had never showed up. As it
Oh,
turned out, eventually she arrived almost an hour and a half late, but by then everybody was exhausted and they decided it would be easier for the soloist to come an hour before the wedding the next day and rehearse then. Before hanging up, the coordinator casually mentioned who this soloist was, and I have to admit that immediately got my attention. It wasn't just anyone. It was the winner of the biggest televised singing competition in the country from the previous season.
what?
The bride and the soloist had gone to high school together, and somehow she had convinced them to fly across the country to sing two solos during the ceremony. The next morning, I arrived at the church an hour before the ceremony, just like I always do. The soloist was already there with their agent, and I have to say, they could not have been nicer. For
Mhm.
someone who had just won the biggest singing competition in the country and suddenly became a household name, they were incredibly down to earth. We ran through both songs once. After we finished rehearsing, the soloist sat beside me at the organ while the guests slowly started to arrive, and we spent a few minutes talking about life and after winning the competition, touring, and how everything had changed for her in the last year. Eventually, my curiosity got the better of me, and I asked, "Okay, so how do you know the bride?" She laughed and said, "Well, we went to high school together." Honestly, I still can't believe she asked me to sing. That wasn't the answer I was expecting. I asked her why, and she just shook her head. She made my life miserable throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school.
Wow.
We were next door neighbors for almost 10 years. But then, why in the world would you agree to do the wedding? And
Right.
without missing a beat, they smiled and shrugged. I'm getting paid. A few minutes later, the visiting pastor stopped by the organ before the ceremony began. He thanked me for handling the rehearsal professionally the night before, and then leaned in a little closer and quietly said, "In all of my years of professional ministry, I have never experienced anything quite like this." He shook his head and he laughed. "I'm more nervous about performing this ceremony than any wedding that I've ever done. And honestly, I have no idea what's going to happen." I smiled and told him I was hoping we'd already seen the worst of it, but deep down I knew. I didn't believe that for 1 second. The ceremony started right on time, and to my surprise, the first few minutes went exactly as planned. The groom's grandmother was escorted down the aisle in her wheelchair, just as
Mhm.
she should have been. Thankfully, no one said a word about it. I later found out that afterwards, during the second fight, she calmly informed the bride and groom that she had planned to give them a house as a wedding gift. Then she looked right at the bride and simply said, "No wheelchair, no house." Apparently, that ended that debate. It's
Oh.
amazing how quickly people's priorities can change, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Then it was time for the bride's entrance. I started the processional, and this time she actually managed to make it all the way down the aisle without stopping for a single selfie.
Oh,
I
thank God.
honestly was impressed. A few minutes later, it was time for the first solo. The soloist sang beautifully. The bride stood there dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, making sure everyone noticed how emotional she was. When the song ended, she even blew a kiss to the soloist. The soloist smiled politely. Now, the ceremony continued without any problems until it was time for the second solo. That's when the
Mm.
bride reached into the top of her dress and pulled out the now famous cell phone. She recorded the entire performance, wiped away a few more dramatic tears, blew another kiss towards the soloist. The rest of the ceremony actually went surprisingly well. The pastor announced them husband and wife. The guests applauded. The newlyweds turned to walk back down the aisle together. Then the bride reached into the top of her dress again, pulled out her phone, and began with the selfies all the way down the aisle. Finally, the bride's parents started to walk. And halfway down the aisle, the mother of the bride apparently decided she wanted to copy her daughter. She stopped every few steps,
You
pulled
gotta
out her
be kidding
phone,
me.
took selfies, and kept going. And by the third stop, her husband had apparently had enough. He simply just kept walking, never turned around, never slowed down, never acknowledged that his wife was 20 feet behind him posing for pictures. When she finally looked up and realized that he was not there, she took off and her high heel snapped. And
Oh
she
my
stumbled
gosh.
forward and almost busted her face on the floor. It was kind of like instant karma. Once the guests had made their way out of the sanctuary, the bride's party came back inside for photographs. The soloist agent walked over to the bride and politely asked, "I need you to delete the video you recorded during the second solo." The bride looked genuinely confused and replied, "What video?" The agent smiled and said, "The one you recorded during the ceremony." The bride immediately became defensive. "So what? It's my wedding." The agent reminded her that due to the contract that the bride had signed, that there was no video recordings allowed of her performance, and recording it without permission was a direct violation of that agreement. The bride crossed her arms and said, "Well, the wedding's over now. There's nothing you can do about it." The discussion went back and forth for several minutes, and the agent never raised her voice, never became rude, never backed down. She simply kept repeating that the contract had been violated and that the recording needed to be deleted before anyone left the church. And with the biggest sigh, she reached in the top of her dress, pulled out the phone, unlocked it, and deleted the video. The agent smiled and said, "Thank you. Now I also need you to delete it from your recently deleted folder."
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Yep. The look on the bride's face was priceless. She glared at the agent for several seconds before dramatically opening the recently deleted folder, and she permanently deleted the video, held the phone up, and said, "Happy now?" The agent smiled, thanked her, and walked away. Crisis averted. The soloist and I left the sanctuary together and started walking towards the parking lot. As I passed the bride, I smiled politely and gave her a little wave. To my complete surprise, she looked at both of us, raised both hands, and flipped us off with both middle fingers in the middle of the church. The visiting pastor happened to see the entire thing. He slowly shook his head. He looked over at the groom and quietly said, "Son, please know that I'll be praying for you." He turned away and walked out the door. Honestly, there wasn't a better ending to a wedding like that, or so I thought. A few days later, the mother of the bride marched into the church office demanding a full refund, not just for part of it, every penny. She wanted the sanctuary rental refunded, the housekeeping fees, the security fees, the pastor's fees, the wedding coordinator's fees, my organist fees, everything. According to her, we had been unprofessional a-holes. And of course, I'm editing there. Our pastor listened patiently while she finished. Then he calmly looked at her and said, "No, that won't be happening." He paused for just a second. "And from everything I've heard, the only unprofessional a-hole," I'm editing there, "were you and your daughter." The pastor told her that.
Oh, wow.
She stormed out of the office announcing that we would be hearing from her attorney. We
Jeez.
never did. Looking back at it now, I've played 488 weddings over the course of my career. I've seen just about every wedding disaster you could imagine, but nothing has even come close to this one. Sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction, and if you're wondering whether anyone could have actually behaved this way over the course of one weekend, I can tell you this. I could not have made this up if I tried.
Gosh, Billy, that's a good one. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Well, Bridezilla is the name of the episode today, right, Billy?
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's funny, when I did research for this, there is an insane amount of Bridezilla stories out there. And one is
Yes.
just cringier than the one before it. So I had a hard time picking which one to use because there's so many.
Right.
But this one, like, I was visually processing it when I was reading it and like just thinking about how crazy this was. So without further delay, let's get into my Bridezilla story. Okay. All right, Billy. So, you know, those weddings where everyone says it was perfect, right? The flowers were beautiful. The couple looked happy. Everyone danced until midnight. This was not one of those weddings, though. This is a story of a bride who wanted perfection so badly, she destroyed her own wedding, trying to control every single person around her. Guests weren't leaving because the reception was over. They were being escorted out. So let's get into it, all right? So I had met the bride years before she got engaged. At first, she seemed fun, confident, outgoing, the kind of person who always had opinions about everything: where to eat, which movie to watch, where everyone should go on vacation. Back then, it was kind of just funny, right? Some seemed a little quirky that she just wants to share all her things. But those weren't opinions. Now that I look at it, they were previews, because once she got engaged, every tiny controlling habit exploded into something much, much bigger. The engagement itself was beautiful. She posted dozens of engagement photos. Then came the countdowns, 364 days to the best wedding ever, and then 300 days, then 250 days. The wedding became less about marrying her fiance and more about creating an event that would impress everyone else. So within weeks, the demand started. Bridesmaids were told exactly what color to dye their hair. If you're like, did he
No.
say how to dye their hair? Yeah.
No.
She told exactly what color they had to dye their hair. No bright reds, no platinum blonde, no dramatic highlights. One bridesmaid was actually told to wait after the wedding before she could start getting her bangs because apparently bangs ruined the aesthetic of the whole wedding.
Well, of course they do. Yeah. Everybody knows that, right?
Yeah, exactly. No bangs until after the wedding. That's for you, Rebecca. Okay.
That's what I was about to say, Rebecca.
Now, when she said this in front of everyone, people started laughing, but she wasn't joking. Guests received a dress code that looked more like a corporate policy manual. Listen to this. Women couldn't wear floral prints, no bright colors, no black because that was too depressing, no white, obviously, no champagne colored because it photographed too close to white, no silver because it distracted from the bridesmaids, no sequins because they reflected flash photography, and men were instructed exactly what color suit jackets were acceptable. She even specified what shade of brown shoes could be worn. Color of the shoes, Billy. And
Right.
I'm not kidding here, right? Now, if I'm the person attending this wedding and I get this, I'm like, I'm not going to the wedding. I'm not going to.
Garbage can.
Sorry,
Garbage
dude.
Can.
If I can't wear my blue suit, I'm not coming. That's right.
Going.
So then came the gifts, Billy. She openly admitted she didn't want cheap presents. She actually said, if you're spending less than $200 on us, just give me cash. You gotta be kidding me. People thought she was being sarcastic. Again, she wasn't. She complained that guests who couldn't invest in her wedding probably shouldn't attend. Imagine saying that out loud. Like, I mean, it's one thing you're that crazy to think that, but you verbally say it out loud. It's just insane. But then things got stranger. The bachelorette trip wasn't a weekend. It became a luxury vacation. Private villa, spa days, boat rental, professional photographer, custom outfits, private chef. Each bridesmaid was expected to spend nearly $3,000.
No.
Think about that, right?
No.
And one bridesmaid quietly admitted she couldn't afford it. Instead of understanding, the bride accused her of not caring enough. Friendship apparently had a price tag, right? Could you imagine someone saying, I can't afford that? Sorry, you must not care enough. Like,
Yeah.
give me a freaking break. Now, let's talk about the fiance.
Okay.
He barely spoke. Whenever someone questioned the budget, he just shrugged. Whenever someone mentioned cost, he just smiled awkwardly. People started joking that he looked like a hostage in every engagement photo. The scary part, nobody was entirely joking. He really did. Now, here we are at the wedding week. It's finally arrived. Everyone hoped that she'd calm down, surely. Once the big day came, she'd relax, but nope. She somehow became worse. Her hair appointment started before sunrise, okay? The makeup artist was running behind. One's bridesmaid's curls weren't uniform enough. And then the bride burst into tears, big, loud, dramatic tears, right? Not because she was emotional, because, and I quote, because I was in the room, this is ruining my vision, everybody. Photographer arrived immediately. The bride began directing everyone around. Smile less, stand straighter, move 3 inches. No, move 3 inches that way. Tilt your head. No, not like that. Again, and after nearly 2 hours, Billy, the groom's grandmother, who was in her 80s, needed to sit down. But what the bride told her is, we're almost done. They weren't. They kept taking photos, and the poor grandmother had to stand up this whole time. Now,
These poor
finally,
grandmas. Yeah.
I'm poor grandma. She needs a seat. I give her a break,
Yeah.
right? So finally, the ceremony happened, and ironically, it was lovely. Short, simple, beautiful even. For about 20 minutes, everyone thought maybe the worst was over, and it wasn't. Not even close. Now the reception started. Cocktail hour was running smoothly. People were laughing, kids were playing, music was great. Then one guest made a mistake. A completely harmless mistake, Billy. She moved one of the decorative candles in the center over to make room for her drink. That's it. The bride saw it from across the room, stormed over, grabbed the candle, and loudly announced, "Does nobody respect anything that I worked for this wedding?" Then the entire room went silent, and it got awkward real fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guests started avoiding eye contact with her. The groom looked embarrassed. The bride acted like nothing had happened. Dinner was served. Everyone was trying to move on. Halfway through dinner, though, another incident. One table started laughing, not loudly, just a normal dinner conversation, telling a joke. The bride interrupted them. She believed they were laughing at her. They weren't. They were talking about someone's toddler who was throwing bread rolls at the table and that made them laugh. But facts didn't matter here anymore. She demanded to know what was so funny. Nobody answered, and then she walked away furious. About another 30 minutes later, security appeared. Yes, security. Apparently, the venue had staff available, and the bride had instructed to remove that entire table of guests and have them leave. Just because she heard them laughing and thought it was about her.
Wow.
Now, again, this wasn't because they caused a scene, not because they were drunk, because she believed they had all disrespected her, right? Imagine sitting there eating your chicken, right? And suddenly someone taps you on the shoulder. Excuse me, you have to leave. People around them couldn't believe this was happening. The guest argued politely, like, what did we do? But no one had an answer because there wasn't one.
Right.
Eventually, they're stunned, but they left. So you think that would have been enough. But Billy, no, it's never enough, right?
Never. Never.
The bride wasn't finished. A little later, she noticed another guest wasn't dancing. And instead, she was sitting there with her elderly father. Now, apparently, to the bride, this wasn't acceptable. The bride believed everyone should be on the dance floor. She marched over, asked why they weren't participating, and the guest explained her father had trouble standing. And the bride rolled her eyes, like so hard, like actually rolled her eyes, and walked away. Later, that same family was asked to leave by security again because they would not dance and the father was too elderly. They had to leave the reception. The reason they gave them it was because they were bringing negative energy. Yeah, negative energy just because someone sat by their elderly dad, right? Now, by this point, word spread through the reception. People stopped relaxing. Every conversation became very quiet, very careful. Nobody wanted to be the next person removed. Now, Billy, imagine you're attending a wedding, right? Where everyone is afraid to laugh, right? Afraid to sit down, afraid to move a flipping candle. That's not a celebration. That's a hostage situation with centerpieces.
100%. 100%.
So the dance floor emptied, not because people were tired, because they wanted to avoid attention. And ironically, the bride kept complaining, why isn't anybody having fun? Nobody wanted to answer.
You?
Because you, lady. Then came the cake cutting, right? The bride insisted nobody take photos with their phones. Nobody. Professional photographer only. One uncle snapped a quick picture anyway. Flash.
Yeah.
1 second. That's all. That poor uncle. She stopped cutting the cake, walked directly over, and demanded he deleted it right there. And then made him delete it from his recently deleted photos. Sound
There
familiar?
we go again. Yep.
So he apologized and deleted it, and she still spent 5 minutes lecturing him during her own cake cutting. Yeah. So at this point, guests began quietly leaving. No goodbyes, no hugs, just exit. Now, the saddest part, the groom, right? We've talked about him before. He spent most of the evening apologizing to everyone. I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening. Please don't take it personally. So imagine it's your wedding day and you're apologizing to everyone, not celebrating, but going table to table, apologizing to everyone for his bride's behavior.
Wow.
Now, Billy, weeks later, the photos appeared online. You knew like everything that happened, perfect smiles, perfect lighting, perfect flowers, thousands of likes, comments like hashtag goals, dream wedding, so magical. Nobody looking at those photos would have guessed several guests had literally been kicked out of the wedding. Then the real story started to spread. Guests started talking. Bridesmaids compared experiences. Family members shared screenshots, the expensive demands, the insults, the constant control. Suddenly, everyone realized they hadn't imagined this thing. They had all experienced it from different places and different pieces of the same nightmare. Friendships disappeared. Some bridesmaids never spoke to her again. Several relatives cut contact. And one guest said, I've been to over 50 weddings. I've never seen people leave because they were afraid of upsetting the bride. That's saying something, right?
Yeah.
And here's the strange thing. I don't think she wanted a marriage. I think she wanted a production, a movie starring herself that day. She chased perfection so aggressively. She chased away the people who actually cared about her. And years later, nobody talks about how beautiful the flowers were. No one remembers the signature cocktail. Nobody remembers the table settings and those stupid candles. They remember being afraid to smile. They remember guests getting escorted out by security. They remember one simple lesson. A wedding lasts one day, but how you treat people, that lasts forever. So here's the question. If you had been there, would you have stayed to the end, my dear listeners, or Billy? Or would you have quietly slipped out long before security had a chance to find your table? So we want to know, what would you have done? If you've ever witnessed a Bridezilla story that's even crazier than mine or Billy's, we want to hear about it, Billy.
Absolutely.
And that is a story about the crazy Bridezilla.
If I saw things going down like that, I would 100% do something to see if I could just get
Exactly. I would have pushed the envelope too. Like,
yep.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Start juggling the candles. Yeah.
And then when they kick me out, I'm going kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
They're gonna yank me out. Oh my gosh, we're gonna make a scene.
It's gonna be like at Bridesmaids at her bachelorette party. And she goes in and starts breaking everything and throwing the food around.
Yes.
If I'm going, I'm taking the cake with me. But like, these are just insane. Like, weddings make people crazy.
They really do. They really do.
And I imagine these people probably weren't one-offs. I'm probably sure they were probably jerks in every aspect of their life. I don't think it just turns on because of a wedding. But
that day. Yeah.
No, I think it just magnified more because everyone's watching. So, Billy, we have crazy stories today, but we know other people have crazy stories about bridezillas or weddings. Where can they tell us all about it so they can be part of the story?
Yeah, we would love for you to come join us at Facebook. Just type in All the Everything Podcast. You'll see all of our stuff right there. Yeah, come over to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We're all the places.
Thank you, Billy. And thank you guys all for joining us for this amazing episode. It was so much fun. And guess what? We can't wait to see you next time for another amazing episode of All the Everything Podcast. Thanks for listening. And I hope you guys have a great day.
Bye, y'all.